This is Brian Anderson. I have a brand new devotional video for you, and this time we're going to be looking at the life of Lot in the book of Genesis. Lot appears to be an example of a backslidden believer, and we know that as we trace his life. So in Genesis chapter 13, verses 8 to 13, we have the story of how Abram and Lot were journeying together. But God had prospered them so greatly that the land couldn't sustain all of their flocks. And so Abram, being the magnanimous man that he was, told Lot, hey, you choose wherever you want to go and I'll take the other portion. So Lot lifted up his eyes and he saw the well-watered plains of the Jordan. The Bible even says it appeared to be like what the Garden of Eden was at the beginning, so lush and so fertile. And so Lot decided that he would choose that area. In chapter 13, verse 10, it says, Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Thus they separated from each other. And then in chapter 13, verse 13, it says, Now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. Now that gives us a little clue as to what's going on. Lot didn't make a choice based on the morality of the people that lived in the city. Lot made this decision based on what seemed good to him in terms of his finances, his prosperity, his material well-being. And we're going to find that as he takes this route down that direction, it's going to get him into a lot of trouble. Next, we find in chapter 13, verse 12, that Lot moved his tents as far as Sodom. He didn't dare move into the wicked city. He just got as close as he could without actually living in it. And this reminds me of those Christians who are always asking how far they can go without actually committing sin. Wrong question. And then in chapter 14, verse 12, the Bible says that Lot was living in Sodom. So he had this first resolve that he would live towards Sodom, but not all the way in the city. Well, that resolve didn't last very long. Now he has moved his family inside the city limits. And then in chapter 19, verse 1, it says that Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Now, in those times, the elders of the city would meet in the city gates to conduct their business. So most likely, Lot has now become one of the leaders of the city of Sodom. So do you see a progression here? First, he makes his decision based on the flesh. Then he gets as close as he can without actually moving into the city. Then he moves into the city. Then he becomes a leader in the city. And then in chapter 19, verse 14, it says, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. So Lot's life was so worldly that when he spoke sobering truth on behalf of God, his family thought he was kidding. They wouldn't take him seriously. And the final thing we see about Lot's life is that his home life, his family, was a wreck. When his family was fleeing for their lives, his wife looked back. Evidently, she was longing for the things of the city. His daughters end up getting him drunk and sleeping with him so that they can get him pregnant. I mean, the immorality of the city of Sodom had completely rubbed off on his family. So Lot's life was a misrepresentation of God's holiness. In fact, if it weren't for a verse in the New Testament, we would conclude that he wasn't a true believer at all. But 2 Peter 3:8 says, For by what he saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day by their lawless deeds. Yes, Lot made some terrible, ungodly decisions. However, in his heart of hearts, he loved the Lord, and his spirit was troubled by all the sin around him. And so that teaches me that a person might be a true believer, and be tormented by the wickedness around them, even though they're still live a life that misrepresents God. What a tragic mistake. So let's resolve that we're not going to follow in Lot's footsteps. Instead, let's follow in the footsteps of Abram. Now, Abraham made some mistakes too. Abraham sinned against the Lord. Abraham departed from fellowship with the Lord, going down into Egypt, making his wife tell a lie, the whole thing. But Abram quickly repented and got back to Bethel and rebuilt the altar and called on the name of the Lord. Let's imitate his example.